Hey Kit, how you doing, man? You okay?
Doing well, mate. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad actually. Thanks for asking. One of the main reasons I wanted to speak to you at the moment was primarily because obviously you've just made a bit of a return to the competitive side of the sport. But I know you've got a few things going on as well at the moment, outside of competitive jiu-jitsu. Can I ask first of all to sort of take you all the way back to the beginning? I know that you started sport quite late compared to a lot of people. Obviously, you came in from Aussie rules football originally, wasn't it?
Yeah. I was playing Aussie rules football, and I think I was 22 when I first touched the mat. And it was for like an MMA academy, and I was trying to learn like more self defense stuff. Um, and then it was probably 6 months later, closer to when I was 23, that I found a school that was just jujitsu.
Okay. And can I ask, what was it that sort of made you make that transition in the end?
I was playing Australian rules football, and I was like I went to school a full year early, and not because I was smarter, just because my parents decided to do that for some reason. And then I was also probably a year underdeveloped. And when I was playing Australian rules football. I started doing quite well, and I started playing well. But a lot of the bigger, more stronger players started like pushing me around a lot, and I remember getting hit behind player. Someone punched me in the stomach, and I was like, man. I want to fight him back, but I'm just going to get beaten up even worse. So I was like, I need to learn how to defend myself. So I found a school, and it was a Jeet Kune Do school. I was a huge Bruce Lee fan. And me and my cousin Michael Shaw, we went there, and we trained there for a little bit, but it was really far. It was like an hour and a half every single time to drive there and back. So after a while of doing like a private once a week there, we found a school in Ringwood which was called Jiu-Jitsu. I think it was called Jiu-Jitsu Lifestyle, and that was run by Bernie Jenkins, who was a brown belt, and we started training there together. And that was when I started really getting into jiu-jitsu. And I think I did it for 5 months, or maybe 10 months. I think it was before I even thought about competing. And then I went and watched a competition, and one of our white belts that I started just getting the better of, he won the competition, and it was Pan Pacs, I think, Pan Pacific Championships. It's like, well, if he could win, maybe I could win as well. I didn't think I'd have a chance to win it, and then I started competing after that.
And this is something that I find quite interesting for people that make the transition from another athletic discipline is that I think in jiu-jitsu, people almost build up competition to something more than it actually is. Whereas in something like Aussie rules football, competition is just part of the game. If you don't compete, then there's no point in you training. You know what I mean? Is that something that you found as well? There was minimal like competition nerves, or did it still sort of hit you in the early days?
No, it still hit me. I put so much pressure on myself, and that was the problem with most of it. It was always like I expect myself to do, way better than I probably can. So no matter what tournament I was going in, if I had any expectations, I was always feeling nervous. It wasn't like I was nervous because I was going to get hurt or anything. It was just nervous that I would lose and people would look at me in a different light. I think the first competition I ever did, I remember two guys coming into the change rooms afterwards and just showing me some appreciation. And it felt really good. I was like, fuck, I like this. So I didn't want to lose that. I got attached to that feeling. So a lot of the competitions, although like smaller in scale compared to what I was playing in Australian rules football, um, I was still very nervous. And I think it's also different too, because you're a lot of the time, not always, depending on what tournament, you're the only, point of focus. When I was playing Australian rules football, there's 18 other people on the field on my side, and then there's 18 against us, and it's a huge oval. So we played against some big crowds, and I played in many grand finals, and I played interleague, senior interleague, Vic East representative sides. So I was very aware of excelling in a sport and what it takes to represent a higher and higher level. I knew that, um, but it was just very different because of the level of intimacy that jiu-jitsu sort of brings compared to football, where you could hide behind a lot of different people.
Yeah, and I think that is one thing as well, is that even if it's a bit different for you, obviously, because you're never sort of a member of a massive team, but even if you are one of those huge squads with 50, 60 people going, there's still only one of you competing at a time. You know what I mean? Everyone's still watching you. Even if you've got a lot of love in the audience, they're still staring at you and watching you do it one on one kind of thing.
Yeah, it's very different. You're a lot more naked in jiu-jitsu than what you are in in football. Even though I feel like football's more dangerous, which is kind of weird, but
And then I know obviously you mentioned your first sort of sight of competition was at Pax, which is a pretty big tournament, really, especially for that area of the world.
I think
And
the first tournament I did was actually, it was an in-house tournament where we had like a bunch of white belts in my division. I think it was 5 fights in a round robin to win. And then I went into the open belt division where I fought 2 purple belts and a blue belt. And I won, but like they weren't great level. I shouldn't have won. I wouldn't have won against a proper blue belt or purple belt then. It was just an in-house tournament. So that was the first one. And then I think I did the Pan Pacific Championships after that.
and then I think that's something that comes up quite a lot from areas like Australia, and like I'm based in the UK, so we had a similar sort of thing about 10, 15 years ago where the competition opportunities were really quite slim. So did you find that hard at all when you were coming up to the colored belt ranks, like actually finding enough matches throughout the year?
Um, I think I mean, I had nothing to compare it to, so you're right in a sense because there'd be a tournament like every couple months or something. It wasn't until I moved to America that I was like, oh, you guys have like tournaments every week here. You know what I mean? So like at that time there was nothing to compare it to, so it didn't seem like that. But definitely when I moved here, I was like, okay, there's a lot more than what we were having in Australia. And I think there's a lot more in Australia now. It grew, exponentially since I first began as well. But I wasn't too disheartened by it. But I was also doing like the bigger tournaments a lot. So I would go I would do the Pan Pacific Championships and Australian Cup, but then I would go and do Japan Open. I would do I do the Pan Americans ones. I do the World Championships here. I do the World Championships in Abu Dhabi. So I'm just kind of doing a lot of the bigger ones. So in that sense, it kind of like I was glad there was a bit of a break because it would have been a lot harder if there was it might because I started at a later age too. It would have been harder if there was competitions every week or so, especially because I'm actually clean, like not like a lot of the others, and I don't use any kind of sports enhancements or anything like that, whatever you call them. Sound like a guy that's like never smoked marijuana, smoked the marijuana, but yeah, I probably would have worn me down. So I was glad that I wasn't competing that much.
Yeah, and I think it's something that you are right that performance enhancing drugs are so common in the sport that if you don't take them, then you are like a bit of an uphill battle. Obviously, technique conquers all. That saying does sort of ring true to a certain extent, but it's still something that is obviously difficult to deal with, and I think that's why it is so common in the sport because it kind of it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? You know what I mean? The more people use, the more people have to use, and it just goes round and round.
Yeah, I hate it. I really do. And I hate it mainly because I don't use it. So for me, I'm just at a disadvantage all the time. If I was using it, then I'd probably have a different attitude towards it. But I'm very skeptical about what I put in my body. And even though I don't know shit about that kind of stuff, I still wouldn't do it. I don't like taking any kind of medication, to be honest with you. Even my multivitamins, I'd be like worried about a lot of the time. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I don't hate people for using it or anything. I don't blame people for using it, but I just in a world where I'd be a little bit more happy, there would be no using it because I know I would do a lot better. There was I fought a couple very big names in the industry where I had only just lost to them, and then they got pinged for the steroids that time or sports enhancing drugs, and it makes a big difference. I used to train with guys, and I could tell the difference straight away between when they were cycling on and cycling off. Um, I've become very familiar with like the muscle density that, when they're doing steroids compared to when they're not doing steroids.
And then I was just going to ask because obviously you had a real sort of like skyrocket to the top of the sport. Really, it feels like over the course of just a handful of years, and then you kind of like dipped off the face of the earth, really, around about like 2019 sort of thing. Why was that? Why was that career sort of such a big wave and then stop? If you know what I mean, like you didn't sort of seem to like drift out bit by bit, do a couple of super fights a year. You sort of disappeared off the face of the earth, you know?
Yeah, I think it was just like motivation, really. I think when I first got in, I was finally motivated to do well in the game, and I think for what I really wanted, I got out of it. I never wanted to be like it was never my interest to be like, the best ever in jiu-jitsu or be like multiple time world champion. I just wanted to like try and become as good as I could and as quick as I could, and then and move on to other challenges. There's a lot of people in jiu-jitsu that just live and breathe jiu-jitsu, and you talk to them and that's all. You're only going to talk about jiu-jitsu. I was never one of those. I had a lot of interest outside of jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is a lot more like a hobby than what it was a professional sport to me. That's more of a credit to the way I trained rather than myself. I was lucky that I trained in a way most people would never thought about training. So I developed a lot quicker and developed a much better understanding than most of them. So I could treat it like a hobby and still be one of the best in the world. But I got kind of bored of it after a little bit, and I wanted a bigger challenge. And I don't mean bigger like as if jiu-jitsu is small, just like something that was more lucrative in a larger competitive environment, so to speak. Like, and that's where I kind of drifted off until I want to get into. And it wasn't just that. I had a couple injuries as well that was sort of like plaguing me that kind of pushed me in there. And I quit jujitsu like start of 2014, and I got back into Australian rules football, and I was really enjoying that. And then I had a big knee injury, and I tore my ACL. So then I had to get that repaired. Took it. I decided to get into acting during that. I got a big role in a movie, and that paid for my knee reconstruction. I got my knee reconstruction, and then it was just like a matter of like, trying to get back into it. But I wasn't really getting back into it. I was just trying to like create a stream of income to keep me afloat until the film and acting stuff took off. And then that kind of like stagnated a lot because of the industry change. So I thought, like, if I want to make it in acting, I'm going to have to make my own shit. I have to do it myself. So I started writing and really worked on writing. And then last year, me and my partner, my, my my business partner, Becca Buckaloo, we wrote a movie together. We directed it together. We both starred in it, and it'll be coming out this year at some point. It's called White Belt, which is surrounded by jiu-jitsu in that as well. It's a fun comedy with some really nice drama, and we're both really proud of that. It's getting edited right now. So I kind of like it. So just took different tracks, and my goal went from jiu-jitsu more into film.
And then you mentioned obviously sort of like drifting into writing yourself and putting the film together. Did you find that like a bit of a chat, like you said, challenge to adapt to a whole new area?
Oh yeah, I spent like 16 hours a day for 3 years, literally just writing, doing nothing. If I went anywhere, I'd bring my iPad with me and I'll be writing there. So I definitely put the time in, and had some really good mentors and friends that helped me along the way. Becca helped me a lot. My ex-partner, she helped me a lot. I got a great mentor, Sheldon Turner, who's one of the best writers on the planet. He helped me a lot. So it was good. I had some really good people around me, and I just put in the work and come up with a lot of good stories. And then Becca came to me and said, like, "Hey, do you want to write a movie about jujitsu?" And then we went from there. And then within the year we filmed it all. And we were really happy with the script, and then we were even happy with the footage we got. And now it's just the third point, which is the editing, which we should have a full first assembly within a week, which will be fun to look at.
Nice, nice. And then that's quite an interesting thing as well, the fact that it wasn't even your idea to do a jiu-jitsu film in the first place.
Nah, I never really wanted to. I was writing a lot of other stuff, a lot more like blockbuster kind of films and stuff like that. And she came up with the idea, and at first I didn't really want to do it. Um, and then she convinced me, and I'm really glad we did it because it was a great idea, and we're really happy with it. So I think it's going to do really well. And that was what kind of led me into, like I said, if I get a film made, I'll go back in a competition, but I couldn't go back in a competition before I got a film made. I had to really focus on that. So that was kind of like the reward in doing the movie, and then going back in a competition, which was nice because then I was going in with no pressure on me, rather than when I used to go in, I'd have a lot of pressure on me. I have to do well. Like now, I just don't really give a shit. It's like I'm going in to compete because it's fun and to challenge myself more than anything.
Yeah, and I mean, it clearly worked because you weren't obviously at their subversive, and I think it's quite a good choice, I think, as well, because you mentioned obviously wanting to come in with no pressure instead of the pressure you used to put on yourself. And Subversive is kind of that style of event where it's just fun. I think like watching it and seeing the environment and the atmosphere, it's a lot less serious maybe than like bigger promotions, but yeah, it just literally looks fun. You know what I mean?
No, it was good. I mean, everything was good. The event was great. My opponent, he's awesome, Blake Builder. We got to chat and we're good friends now. And we both had the same kind of attitude. Let's just go and have fun and just, put on a match and stuff. So it was cool. I felt like very free in that competition environment. And I kind of prefer that. I don't take jujitsu near as seriously as what most people do. And I don't enjoy it if I do. So I think it's a lot more fun when you can make it fun, if that makes sense, and take the pressure off.
And have you got any other plans for competition then for the rest of the year, or is that just something you're going to wait and
No,
see?
nothing's locked in, but I'm definitely planning on competing. Um, it's tough. Yeah, I've got to get my knee fixed at the moment. It's a little bit dodgy. Um, even I didn't have a great like. I trained twice. I think the 2 weeks prior to this competition. I did some other training because I was helping Becca actually record some training programs. So we did an hour of strength and conditioning for jiu-jitsu the day before, an hour of strength and conditioning the day of, and an hour and a half the day after the match. So I was actually really sore when it came to competing. I had to warm up really good because like my glutes were killing me. I was like, oh my God. She trains like a madman. I don't. I was not prepared for that. But there's some really good programs that I know they're going to do really good for people in jiu-jitsu, especially people that want to get fit and can't train every day or something. They could supplement these 30-minute sessions. I just wouldn't recommend you do it before you're competing the day of competing like me.
Yeah, it's definitely not a good idea to be fair.
Uh,
And then where you've got that sort of like coming out in the future, then have you got like a release date for either the film or for the instructionals now in the near future? Or
I think the programs will probably be up and running in about probably about a month, and they're going to be great. I think they're like I said, they're really good for people that um, can't train every single day or want to get fitter for training and prevent injuries for training. These 30-minute workouts you can do on your own wherever you are. That'll simulate jiu-jitsu and get you stronger and fitter for jiu-jitsu, or just stronger and fitter in general and get you healthier. So I think they're going to do really good, and they should be out in about a month. I think it's Becca Buckfit on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube she has like 5-minute videos that you can get for free right now to get a bit of a feeling of it. And then I'll have another program myself, which will be a lot on task-based games and ecological training and how to set up a full curriculum for people that want to do that. I have task-based games at the moment, which has done really good, task-based games 1 and 2, but I want to create a full curriculum for people that know, and people that run schools that know, okay, these are the games that lead from this game to this game to this game to this game for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and just know exactly how to structure it, because that's like one of the bigger questions I get, as well as me going back and competing. So I think those are going to do well. And then the movie should be out sometime around September this year, I think.
nice, nice. So you've got a pretty busy year ahead, really.
Yeah, it should be pretty busy. Busy and not busy. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. There's a lot of waiting around and stuff like that. But yeah, things are definitely moving. And a lot of it is just, it's coming from the years and years and years of grinding before that to make this happen now.
And then one of the things you mentioned as well is something that I really wanted to sort of go over with you, because I think it's quite interesting that you were really kind of like the first person in jiu-jitsu to, like you mentioned, it gave you a bit of an advantage in the early days where you were focusing on task-based games and what people now sort of refer to as ecological training methods. But it's quite weird that, several years after you sort of stopped competing, now all of a sudden it's coming back again where people are starting to talk about it a lot more. And I think it's actually gaining almost more traction now, even though from my perspective, you were actually proving it almost at a higher level in the past, whereas a lot of the people that are proponents of it now aren't competing at that same high level that you were, 5 to 10 years ago, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it just takes a long time for people to break away from, old beliefs and stuff like that. And a lot of people just thought I was crazy and I was talking shit. And it just took a long time for them to start realizing. I just got sick of beating people over the head with it and sick of telling people that. I'm like, listen, I'm telling you, you're training in a way that's going to take you 5 times longer to get good at jiu-jitsu. This is the way to train. It's very simple. But a lot of people think like, oh no, you're full of shit. You don't know what you're talking about. That makes no sense. Now people are like, oh, hold on a minute. Actually, that shit does actually work. And it's scientifically backed up. And I think there's been a few people that are really good with pushing that, like Greg and a few others that have been doing really well, really good job of marketing that and stuff. So it's good. It's not good for me because now people are getting better at jiu-jitsu and stuff. And it's like, gonna make it harder for me. But, for a while, I could let everyone train 5 times more than me and still progress faster. But if they're doing games now, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah, and can I ask as well, where you mentioned Greg, obviously Greg Sudas, he's probably the biggest proponent of ecological training methods at the moment. Do you find that, like you said, he has a more like evidence science backed approach to it and the way he breaks it down, whereas you were a lot more sort of like casual with the way you explained it and the way that you sort of like fought your corner, if you know what I mean? Did you ever actually look into the scientific backing side of it though, or was it more sort of based on your own experience?
Slightly, slightly. It was all based on my experience, and what it was people looking at the way I was training and sending me like case studies on training and stuff, and going, "Hey, this is why it works. This is why it works." So I looked in it, but I wasn't very interested in the academic stuff. I'm more of like the experiment man. Like I like to do things and learn from experience and stuff like that, rather than studying stuff. So it's good to have both of us because I'm like the example of it, and Greg has all the references to the science behind it. So I think we're both a really good proponent for it, but it's definitely not my style to be studying that, and I'll even get lost in the literature and the jargon. I kind of just keep it very simplistic, but everything I talk about is usually based on my own experience and things that I've seen and done personally. Where Greg's gonna be a lot better at giving you all the science behind it and stuff.
So how did you actually stumble into that sort of like way of training initially then?
I was bored of the way the practicing techniques just bored me, to be honest with you. I wasn't interested in doing it. I would get into training and I would wait till they finished all the techniques and then I would get on the mat. I just wanted to roll. And probably my ADHD didn't help. So it was more accidentally. I just wanted to roll, but for some reason, I was getting better way faster than everyone else, doing less training than everyone else. And then I started figuring out, like, oh, hold on a second. It's not even that you don't need to drill techniques. It's actually worse for you to drill techniques. And then I was like, I'm onto something here. So then I started like focusing on what was really getting me the results, and then my jiu-jitsu got even better and better. That's where I didn't need to train as much and I could still compete. I'm going against guys that have been training for 16 years and I've been training for 3.5 years and training far less than them as well, and not doing the strength and conditioning and just coming in. I'm also working a full-time job and I'm playing Australian rules football at the same time and balancing about 15 other hobbies. So it was no doubt in my mind I stumbled across something really good, but it was only by accident.
And I think you said something that's going to cause a bit of controversy there when you said you think drilling's actually worse for you,
Yeah.
rather than not as effective. You think it's actually detrimental, do you?
Yeah, definitely. It makes you more rigid and predictable. And it's just a waste of time as well. Time that could be way better spent. A lot of people just don't see it and they get away with it because they're training like, 4 or 5 hours a day. So even if they're doing, an hour of that training of drilling is, let's say an hour of that training is drilling and they're going backwards in that time, the rest of it's pushing them, exponentially further forward. So it's just very hard for them to see and to break that down. But I'm sure if they really looked at it and they played around and experimented with their training, they would see that by removing that, they're going to be much better. And I mean, you just want to look at jiu-jitsu as a problem-solving game and become much better at problem-solving live in the moment. And anytime you're trying to pre-shape and rehearse it, you're not problem-solving. You're trying to create a theater piece out of jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? And it just makes you more predictable. Yeah, people are going to start working you out a lot quicker, and people think that I didn't get this because I'm not fast enough, so I need to drill it, become faster. It's like no, you're just predictable, and the problem is people can read you. And look, if they're a beginner and they can read you, it doesn't matter. They don't have the answers. But if there's someone similar level and they have answers and counters for what you're doing, and they can read you, and you can't read them, then you are in trouble. And the better you get at problem solving and working through like the ecological method or the task-based games method is you become very good at hiding your intentions and reading other people's intentions. And when you can do that and you're a very good problem solver, you are a pain in the ass to deal with because it doesn't matter how much better they are than you know what they're about to do and you have answers for it. And they don't know what you're about to do. And you're going to beat them even if they're technically better than you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people actually experienced but don't really know how to put into words as well. Where I think it's like a common thing that people talk about where wrestlers just come into jiu-jitsu and it feels like they never stop moving and they do really well and it's so hard to off balance and take down. And a lot of that isn't, like you said, it isn't a rigid learning of your left foot goes here, your right hand goes here. It's just hours and hours and hours of mat time going through those same positions over and over until there's nothing that you do that is wrong because you've already tried everything wrong and you know what to do right now. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, that's the secret there is like people overcomplicate learning and everything. It's really just getting exposed to the same problem over and over again, and you will find a way. Everyone does. Everyone is great at learning like that. They just need to take a little bit of time. And I'm 100% certain, yeah, especially with like the task-based games learning, if I can give you the games that will cover all areas of your jiu-jitsu and you put the time into it, you will become exponentially better, way faster than everybody else. I don't care who they are, you will learn faster than all of them if you do it like that. So it's just really knowing what you need to expose yourself to and then just doing it. And you see guys that have been training for a long time or just beginning that think they have no ability at figuring things out, start figuring things out really quickly. And the faster they start figuring things out, the faster it is to figure more things out. You become a better problem solver and you become better at everything. It's like it's pretty crazy to see people, especially when they come from like drilling backgrounds, and then I get them to throw out all the drills and start playing like this. You just see in their eyes, they're just like, oh my God, why have I not been doing this? This is so much better. Or you get beginners that come in and I just give them a couple games and they've never even done jiu-jitsu and they have so much fun and they figure things out so much quicker. And it's good because what you do is you put them in the position to become their own coach, and they don't need to rely on you anymore. They might rely on you for some games and stuff like that, but you don't need to helicopter parent them and tell them exactly where to put their arm and where to do this and where to do that. I just get a game that I know is going to help them figure that out themselves. And it's going to have them figuring out in a way that is much better for them and suits them rather than me telling them what works well for me or me being this, gatekeeper of technique. And, you do this, you do that. I'm telling you, nothing in jiu-jitsu is like that. Nothing is precise and nothing works all the time. Nothing never works. It's like, it's always what is the best thing to do and the right thing to do in the moment. And there's usually multiple of those. And it depends on what your opponent is thinking and what your opponent is expecting. And, at what point in the match is it? What kind of mats are you on? What kind of rash guard you're on? Are you in a gi? Are you sweating? Is he sweating? Is he fat? Is he skinny? All these things come into play. And you need to be able to take in all these variables at a very, very quick rate to come up with the best solution in the moment. And if you're practicing techniques and drilling techniques, you're not even close to that. You're not even going to be on that level. That's why, like I said, I could train very little and still compete with some of the best guys in the world that had spent 10 times more time training than me, doing steroids, doing weights, because they're focusing on the physical stuff. And I'm focusing far more on the mental stuff. And I'm becoming a much better problem solver instead of, an acquirer of techniques.
I think that's something as well that people do. So on a personal level, I like doing both. To be totally honest with you, I like drilling to a certain extent to sort of like understand the movement. But I think once you know what you're going for, I like to just jump in then. Um, but like I said, whether that's right or wrong, I don't. But one thing I will say is that I think people do have the experience of some of the things you're talking about where there's I know everyone has met that person in training where they'll be able to tell you the answer, but they can't do it themselves. And
Mm.
I think a lot of people sort of put that down to, oh, they just haven't worked on it enough, or they haven't done it enough. But that kind of is the whole task-based games thing in a nutshell, is that you can know what to do as much as you want. If you haven't done it 1,000 times in a live scenario, then you're never actually going to do it in a live scenario. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, there's that, and it's also like it's never the same way twice. You're never going to do the same thing twice ever. There's always going to be something that is quite different, and you also, and this is to kind of combat what you were kind of saying. If we want to do that, like for example, where you say like you drill something to understand it. Can you? Sorry, it's not the mic. Can you explain that for me?
So I just mean in terms of, as an example, when I first started out, someone would talk about, let's say, like a hip bump sweep, and then I would want to know the basic things I'm going for, like how am I getting my ass off the mat, how am I creating that like motion into the side of the hips, how am I getting my hips to that angle. As soon as I know that, then the sort of complementary things like taking out a post and actually setting it up, those sorts of things, I think you work out through actual training. Then, do you know what I mean? So the sweep itself is generally the same, but the smaller details can be anything. That makes sense. Like I said, taking out a post, you can do it 1,000 different ways.
So
Whereas,
yes, so what I would do in that stage, instead of practicing the technique, I would play in the area and I would give you a game to try and play and play and play until you start developing a lot of or building a real good understanding of this area and what you kind of need to do. And then I would start giving you little tips like, oh, maybe you could like, you know, bring his legs over this way. And if you do this and you switch your hips, what you can slide across. And it's kind of like, because it sounds like and what most people the mistake most people make when it comes to jiu-jitsu is they're trying to acquire technique still. And I try and explain to people in this kind of like Matrix Neo style way, there is no technique. It's just like everything is different the whole time. It's like a very intricate conversation, and you don't want to be learning pickup lines. You want to learn how to communicate. And I try and get people out of the idea of when it comes to learning jiu-jitsu, because it's really hard to think that drilling is not going to be beneficial if you think about jiu-jitsu as acquiring techniques. So I don't even like there to be techniques. I understand the benefit of it sometimes because it's like an easy way to articulate a certain movement and you could use that. But in terms of practicing it, like I would just steer people really far away from practicing anything like that. You can look at it, you can play, you can experiment, and you can do it in lighter resistance if you want to do it with someone that's not very good. But I would very much encourage people to just play with the area. And if you play with the area enough, then what happens is when you see one of these techniques, you know what they did. You go, oh, I see what's going on. I know why that works. But if you don't know why, if you haven't played in that area enough, then what happens is you see that technique and you're like, I don't understand it. I'm going to have to practice it. And then you start drilling it. So the problem is like you don't have enough experience in the area. So then you have to rely on drilling, which is going to stunt you anyway. So what I would tell people to do is like, if you need to practice something, you need to drill something, it's because you don't have enough experience in the area. Go into that area, play with that area enough until you can see a technique and then know what they're doing. And you can start doing that same thing, or you can just take concepts in certain parts of it and then use that rather than, and then you never have to drill. And I'm telling you, you don't have to because I haven't done it. I'm telling you, it's so much better because it is. But if you're still halfway in that area, you're still costing yourself a lot of time. And it's more because like, the drilling side of things will take you 5 times longer to get good. So you're getting something that's like, okay, I'm doing this much time and this much time of this. Well, the game's time is doing really good, but that other time is like stretching that progression out much further while slower. Um, but it's very, like I said, it's very hard to understand that if you look at jiu-jitsu as in the accumulation of techniques instead of the acquisition of skill and knowledge and becoming a better problem solver. And that's where most people get confused with, I don't get it. How can you do jiu-jitsu without drilling? Or, how do you learn techniques? I try and tell them you're not there to learn techniques. You're there to learn how to problem solve. And like I said, it's like the same thing with the pickup world. It's like you're there to communicate with a female, not to use pickup lines. And pickup lines may help you at the start, but they're going to hinder you in the long run. And it's the same thing with techniques. Techniques may help you at the start, but they're going to hinder you in the long run. I'd rather you not know what to do and spend a bit of time figuring it out and then knowing exactly why you're doing what it is you're doing and growing on that, rather than me going, hey, here's a shortcut, use this for the moment. And then you end up relying on that shortcut and becoming, a victim, a prisoner to that shortcut, which is a technique. And then you can only do that technique until I show you a new one or until you learn a new one. And then you start adopting a new one, rather than if you were just learning how to problem solve your way through there, you become a better problem solver. And whatever boundary or whatever obstacle they put your way, you problem solve your way around it. So then you don't need to learn techniques. You just need to keep problem solving.
well, yeah, I mean, I think to be honest with you, it's like it is an emerging area of the sport, really, where, like you said, you were, or like I said, you were one of the first to really sort of like harp on about it to a high level, and then now it's actually sort of like gaining traction. And I think even people that are dead set against it, they do still actually do a decent amount of positional sparring at the very least, or a decent amount of playing in
Yeah, they
certain
all do.
areas.
They all do. They're all doing games, or they're all doing. Doesn't have to be games. It could just be rolling. It's the same sort of thing, just in a lot more open area. So the answer is very simple in itself. It's like there's people that learn without doing them, and there's people learning with doing, but both groups have to do the game style of learning, the problem solving style of learning. There's no one just drilling and getting good at jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? As there were. Yeah, if there were, it'd be more like the karate tournaments where they do like the displays and stuff, which look really cool. But I don't know if they're going to go into the UFC and do well with those katas.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, it's been a long road, but it's something that is gaining more traction there. Do you think you'll ever see a time, 5, 10 years from now, where it's really taken off to the point that it is what most people are doing in the sport?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I said that 10 years ago. I said that everyone will be doing it. I said in 10 years, but I was a little wrong. I reckon another 10 years, everyone will be doing it. It generally works like that. There's a lot of people that look, most people can't think for themselves. And that's the reality. Most people do not know how to think for themselves. So they're just going off what they were told. And usually they can't deviate from that. And they're looking at things at a very surface level. I'm gifted and cursed with the ability to really like break things down and really understand things and experiment with things and figure things out, which is good and bad. Good in some areas, horrible in other areas. So I I naturally do that, but most people don't do that. So they just got to see enough people doing something, and then suddenly they just keep following and following and following. But it's definitely moved that way. I've seen people that were huge, huge drillers and hate you said, the task-based games or that kind of learning is not any good. And now all they're doing is task-based games and learning like that. So it's there's it'll definitely just keep catching on for sure. And it works. That's the thing. It's like if you want to bring out a product that works. Even if you don't have good marketing, word of mouth will catch on. And that's what this was.
Do you think you you basically didn't have good enough marketing back then, but word of mouth has seen you through?
Yeah, I just wasn't persistent enough. I came in jiu-jitsu very quickly and I left very quickly. If I was like everyone else doing like, competed 20 different black belt world championships, and I would have won a bunch. And then you'd be able to say, people would be taking what I said a lot more seriously. But I was very quick in there and very quick out. So I just didn't have the time and resources to market. I think I did as good as I could have, especially because I was using like comedy to promote a lot of my stuff. Even though I'm super serious right now, I was using a lot of comedy to do that kind of stuff. So I think I still helped, you know, with that. But if I had have been, more like Craig Jones and competed a lot more and kept doing that, then for sure I would have had a much bigger impact on that. It's just my goals were also outside of the jiu-jitsu world as well, not just jiu-jitsu. Like I've done a lot of things at a high level. Like competed at state level in inline hockey, Australian rules football. I was like a top 1% gamer. I've done, made a movie. I've written a movie. I've acted in movies. It's like I've done a lot of different stuff.
That's all right. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I had time to go through with you now anyway. Is there anything that you want to mention or anyone you want to give a shout out to before I let you go?
If they want to see any of my products and they want to learn the way I learn, go to kitdaletraining.com or just check out my Instagram, Kitdale Official, and I have a lot of products up there. And check it out. And otherwise, don't check it out.
Nice. Well, I'm sure there'll be a few people catching the movie when it comes out later this year as well.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I'm for that.
Nice one. Well, thanks so much for your time, Kit, and take it easy. All right.
No worries, buddy. Take care, mate.
Cheers.